You've got 3 tools to pop the sense of sunlight in your paintings. And I'll be using this image to demonstrate it, my wife Anne in the garden. So you have 3 things to pay attention to. The first is value. Where the light hits is obviously lighter than where it doesn't. So the first thing are the big shapes of light and dark. And then 2, you use color temperature to enhance that value shift. Warm in the light, cool in the shadows. And 3, and this is really important, keeping those 2 families of warm and cool separate. The quickest way to get mud and lose a sense of sunlight is to get the warm and the cool muddied up. This is Ian Roberts and Mastering Composition. So first, let me show you how I simplified the photo so my painting isn't cluttered with a lot of unimportant detail. If you just paint in all the details, you can get buried by them. So I would get rid of that chair, I would get rid of that doorway, I would get rid of the bucket, this thing, that, those plants there. And then you'll notice there's something here, I'd get rid of that. But you'll notice that there's actually another bed just down here with a big plant coming out here, and then some chives there. So I'd get rid of almost all of that. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do here, but you'll see I figure it out as I paint. But what I didn't want is I have this in light coming out of here, lit and dark. And I didn't want this plant in shadow interfering with what I was trying to get on back there. So most of this I just get rid of, and in the end get rid of all of it. So first, this is my standard palette. I've got everything like the color wheel, same order as the color wheel. The actual pigments themselves I've listed down below, but you'll see even here, on one side you've got the warm colors, on the other side you've got the cool colors. And the first color I've chosen is the most neutral color, least intense color, just to get started to kind of key what I want to do in terms of the shadows. And then I go to put in the first green, which is the one just in the grasses, sort of same value, but now we've gone to the hue of green, right? But cool green. It's a cool dark green. I'm using a 1-inch chip brush here, maybe a touch of Gamsol, but not really. And then I'm going to the big dark shape in the background, the one that sort of lets the figure pop. So you can see the colors I'm mixing as I do that, but I'm pretty much just putting big shapes, just thinking of, and I'm putting in all the shadows first, getting the whole shadow side in, everything in first, and then I'll adjust all the warm colors against that. Now there's that big plant, a dill plant I think, that is just sort of growing up in the foreground that I put in for now, but as it goes along I get rid of it because it interferes so much with that shape of the lit and the dark plant that's sort of central to the whole painting. And then there's the dirt color. Every one of these is in shadow, right? Everything so far is in shadow. I'm going to put all those things in first. So you get a dark, and at this point, these are really neutral colors. I'm just sort of putting a little bit of definition for the top edge of that, and I keep downplaying that as we go. So now here is the first sunlit color. All the shadows are in, and there is the grass. You can see how warm it is compared to the shadow side of the grass, and I'll actually make that grass a little bluer as we go. And that's the clay pot up in the other side there. So it's kind of got a warm hit, a secondary warm hit that sort of counterplays with the figure, which gets pretty intense. And then there's the sunlit concrete right there on the edge of the building. And you'll see that I adjust that edge too once I've sort of got everything. But you can see the warm, cool temperature there. And then now I'm putting in the big sunlit shape of the plant, the major mass there. And then that's shadow again. That's the top of the dill, which later disappears. That's sunlit. This is a warmer color, but it's a plant that's sort of a warmer color. But you can see the difference between them, but it still reads as a sunlit plant. Then I'm just sort of adding some definition to those plants on the right-hand side. This is sort of a blue-gray for all the shadowed white flowers in that big bush. And then these are the sunlit ones. So one's got a little bit of blue in it, the other one's got a little bit of yellow in it. And so they just, even at that point, you just sort of pull them apart. And then there's the shadow side of the figure as we're going along here, and then the lit side of the figure. So you can see that temperature shift even there. One's warm, just a little, but one's warm and one's cool. And you just keep those two apart. And if you start muddling them, that's how you get mud. You just sort of think of, there I'm starting to push, just so that the shadow didn't end right at the edge of the building. I'm just having this little light move up into the building, so they kind of an interplay there. And then there's that path back into the gravel behind there, and then a little bit of modulation to that great big mass of dark at the back. And then I'm just sort of forming a little bit more interesting shapes. So one of the things, a lot of what I was dealing with towards the end is just downplaying the bottom third of the painting. So you sort of see that there's two flower beds there, but not really pay much attention to them. And then there's, in shadow, but quite a warm shadow color. And then again, a cool green to sort of articulate the lit side and the dark side of that plant. And I do the same thing over on that. Then, you can just see that I'm playing light into dark, and then the same thing with that warmer plant. I've got a warmer shadow. It's cool compared to the lit side, but you get that interplay between the orange color of that plant and the green plant, and you realize, oh, all four colors are different, warm and cool. So if you have a red barn door and half of it's in shadow and half of it's in light, it's not that the shadow side of a red barn door, bright red, intense red, is cool. It's still warm, but compared to that same red in sunlight, you've got a dramatic shift in temperature, warm to cool. And now I'm adjusting the shape of the sunlit side, so it looks like the light's just hitting the top of it rather than coming down the side. So now you'll see that, what do we call it, the dill plant, I'm sort of getting rid of it now, right? I'm putting this dark shape at the bottom of the big bush shape, and slowly that dill plant is going to be disappearing. So that's the shadow at the bottom of the plant, and then I'll be putting some modulation into that. So now that dill plant just disappeared. I'm not even thinking about it anymore, and I have to resolve all that stuff down at the bottom later. So now, seeing that we are seeing the whole bush, I'm wanting to get a good dark shadow at the very bottom where no light is getting in there, and then I'll start to sort of define it by putting that sort of half light back into it, the sort of leaves and so on like that, so it's a little bit more articulated. So as I'm working here, just see that what's in shadow stays in shadow. What's in light stays in light. And those two are never getting muddled so that I'm unclear of where they are. Because the moment you do that, then you really just start getting into mud. So now I'm sort of defining those flower beds. And in fact, I sort of keep diminishing them, softening the edges so that they aren't so prominent. And then, sort of a little bit more definition on those plants over on the other side. And then now putting in the sunlit, it's sort of white and just a little bit of cad yellow medium, putting in the sunlit flowers. So all those things are going in. I'm just, then these are the ones that are in shadow. And I realized, oh, they're too light. They're cool, but they're too light. So I went over them with a second layer that's darker, a little bit darker, right? And bluer. So you just get the sense, oh, lit side, dark side. Because they're still light, even though they're in the shadow, but then I need to articulate them a little bit more so that they feel like they're actual shadows and not blobs of paint. And then I'm just pushing the temperature. See how that's almost yellow, right? The grass. Really just pushing the temperature there to make sure that we're getting that sense of warm and cool. And a nice blue for the pants, and just sort of delineating the figure a little bit better with some modulation within the shadow. So we have these 3 points: finding the value, finding the temperature, the warm and cool temperature, and the interplay of value and temperature, and not getting the two of them muddled. We need value and temperature to give us, see, we're just using smeared pigments on a two-dimensional surface. And that's to represent real sunlight in the three-dimensional world. So we need to use all the tools we have at our disposal, value and warm and cool light, to really pop that sense of sunlight. And central to that, of course, is making sure that we keep them apart, because the moment we start muddling warm and cool together, we lose the sense of sunlight very quickly. And here you can just see that I'm sort of creating a plant at the front of the bed there, and I eliminate all those plants in the foreground because I just want our attention to slide easily into the sunlit part of the painting. And there's the finished painting. And you can see, to get that sense of the last evening light sort of raking across the tops of the objects, how you need to create that big temperature shift and keep them separate. Everything in the light's warm, everything in the shadows cool. And you just keep them apart, and you really get to pop that sense of sunlight in your painting. Try this yourself with a photo of late afternoon light when you have large, simple shapes of light and dark and a sense of warm light. And one tip, exaggerate that sense of warm in the light and cool in the shadows. You can push it much further than you think, and it'll pop that sense of sunlight in your painting. So good luck with that. And if you found this video helpful, I have a free video, Mastering Composition, 4 foundational principles to help you dramatically and consistently improve your painting. And you can go to ianroberts.com to receive that, or click up there. So I do hope you found this video helpful. Until next month's video, may the expression of your creative spirit be rich and fulfilling. All the very best, and bye for now.